I cannot believe we actually have football today. Is a massive day. Going to be talking about a lot here, but before we get into anything, I have a super special announcement. We actually have flockfantasy.com launching. Can't wait for this. You can go through, use the league analyzer, and I'm actually going to be reviewing your fantasy football teams all year through flockfantasy.com. Here's a little look of what the Flock League looks on it. You can see your boy up there second in the power rankings, should be first. Not going to complain about it too much though. But of course, if you want to go out there, check that out. You can on flockfantasy.com. I'm going to be reviewing all your teams there, answering all your questions there as well. I decided for opening day though, we're just going to do free questions in the live chat so I can try to get back to y'all. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this. And we have a couple injuries that we need to talk about first. But first, Dawson says, do we start Calvin Ridley or Jerome Ford? So from what I've seen, it does look like you are going to have DeAndre Hopkins good to go week one. Obviously, in the case of Ford, you're in a decent spot with no Nick Chubb initially, but it is a tough matchup going up against the Dallas Cowboys. So I think you can kind of go back and forth here between Ridley and Ford. I personally would just go with the running back that has the guaranteed volume. Obviously, Ridley, wide receiver, changing offenses. We don't necessarily know exactly what to expect with Will Levis. So I'm going to take the security that we have with Jerome Ford. But Teresa in the chat says, hey, I got the merch package. Thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us in this live stream every single night. Really do appreciate it. But our next question coming out from Zachabot says Jaylen Warren or Chase Brown. So I have Jaylen Warren and Chase Brown ranked back-to-back. If you check out my rankings on flockfantasy.com, I think you can really make an argument for either running back here. Sounds like Jaylen Warren is going to be good to go with the hamstring injury. Obviously, Chase Brown is in the better offense. I think that at this point of their respective careers, Jaylen Warren has shown me more. I think you have a very safe role as a receiver. So if it was a full PPR format, I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Warren. If it's a non-PPR league where we're just chasing touchdown upside, there instead, I think you can go ahead and take Jerome Ford. But Bacon Fox is what happened to Christian McCaffrey. So McCaffrey popped up on the injury report today where he is dealing with both. It's his calf, it's his Achilles. They're being very vague about it. All I would say with McCaffrey is let's for sure make sure that Jordan Mason is rostered. I don't care if you have McCaffrey or not. Jordan Mason needs to be on your team if he's on the waiver wire. I am still going to be relying on Jordan Mason this week, though. I'm still going to be relying on Christian McCaffrey this week. I'd probably just lower expectations. And 100%, this is going to be something that we're looking for any updates that we can get. Hopefully something comes out tonight. If not, I'm sure we'll get an update tomorrow. But Kyle, welcome to being a member of the flock. We have Brutus as a member of the flock here as well. But also, freaking Underdog's going nuts right now with their promos. For the love of God, make sure you are taking advantage of all these. Going back, and what's actually great is if you take advantage of these on Underdog Fantasy, you are going to get a free team review from yours truly over there on flockfantasy.com. Underdog for tonight's game has a Travis Kelce special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for tonight. Plus, Underdog is rolling out a Dak Prescott special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for Friday night. And only if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get an additional Christian McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard. Nuts that they're doing all three of these. Plus, they're doing a 30% profit boost token today as well. I've never seen Underdog do nearly this many promos. If you use code FLOCK, you're going to get all of those, including the exclusive one, plus a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And I will go through and break down your fantasy football team on flockfantasy.com for free. Just after you use code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy starting today, make sure you have your account set up on flockfantasy.com with that same email address. And then the following day, I will go through and I will credit your account with a free team review voucher from yours truly. But make sure you take advantage of that. Now, James coming out says, do I start Brock Purdy or Tua? So right now, Purdy is my top quarterback in the Flock League. but I'm not even starting him this week. I'm even starting Caleb Williams this week because it is a tough matchup for Brock Purdy going up against the Jets. You have no Sticky Ricky. Now you're dealing with this vague Christian McCaffrey injury. If you look at the implied team total, Miami is actually supposed to score significantly more than what you have with San Francisco. It's not like either quarterback really has a ton of rushing upside either. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and take the quarterback that's supposed to be in the highest scoring offense. I think we will take Tua here. Now, Joseph says, who would you drop to pick up Jordan Mason? Ramondre Stevenson, Chuba Hubbard, or Rico Dowdle. So I actually had somebody else, Jack text me today asking if he should drop Rico Dowdle for Jordan Mason. And that's about the range of, okay, your fantasy football league is so shallow, you're probably better off just going ahead and holding on to Rico. Rico would be the guy that I would drop out of this list, just because Ramondre is locked and loaded to be a starter potentially all year. And Chuba Hubbard obviously has that massive role with the injury to Jonathan Brooks right now. But Jack coming out says, do we trade Derrick Henry for Devon Achane? Personally, I would prefer Achane. I think he's going to have a larger role as a receiver. I think Miami is going to be an offense that actually scores more points than Baltimore this season as well. Achane is the younger ascending talent. Derrick Henry has declined for 3 straight seasons now, and at the same time won't have that role as a receiver. But Arusa says Keenan or Raheem Mostert in the flex spot. So this is a little bit of a tougher question, right? Obviously, if you're in a full PPR format, you're expecting that Keenan has the receiving volume where Mostert just simply doesn't. The gap in receptions between these two guys can probably be 6 points. So there should be a pretty big difference if it is a full PPR league versus a non-PPR format. If it is a half PPR or a non-PPR league, I think we go Mostert easily. If it is a full PPR format, I do think it can be up to you and what you're expecting. I personally think it's a really good matchup for Mostert this week, so I'm completely fine going in his direction. Now, Du Bois says Pickens or Chris Godwin. So we actually got news today as well that Russell Wilson is dealing with his own injury. That will be something to monitor. If we end up getting Justin Fields for week 1, I would say at that point, you're most likely wanting to pivot over and go Chris Godwin. Justin Fields would be great for fantasy, but bad for George Pickens in fantasy. Right now, if you're looking at where I have these guys ranked, George Pickens going up against the Atlanta Falcons is a tier ahead of Chris Godwin for me. But like I said, if Russ were to miss, I think we could potentially change that. Now, let's see. Matthew says, Ladd McConkey, Rookie of the Year, what are the chances? So I can go ahead and I can literally just pull up the actual odds and I can tell you if I like them or not. Let's look up the lines, Rookie of the Year. Okay. And let's see what we got here. We looked at this recently. So right now, Caleb Williams is plus 150. Jaden Daniels plus 600. Harrison plus 800. Bo Nix 12-1. Neighbors 15-1. May 20-1. Worthy 22-1. Keon Coleman 37-1. And Ladd McConkey 40-1. So sportsbooks have him 40-1. My guy, I don't even know if I like the value on that, to be completely honest with you. But Reedy coming out says start Kyler Murray or Jared Goff. So the Detroit Lions do project out to be the highest scoring offense in the league this week. Obviously, elite offensive line, great matchup going up against the Rams. Should be a super high scoring game in general. And I do want to start as many Detroit Lions players as I possibly can. Now, with that being said, Kyler Murray does have the rushing upside that Jared Goff doesn't. So I probably go ahead and I probably play Kyler over Goff there. Okay. Now, let's move this. Joel says Pickens, Najee, or Zamir White in the flex, half PPR format. So if I'm looking at this, I would prefer probably George Pickens. My thought process is all 3 players should be in bad offenses. Maybe with this being a half PPR format, it does change things just slightly. If I was looking at my flex rankings this week, which are on flockfantasy.com, I had Pickens at 50. I have Zamir down at 63 and Najee Harris at 62. Like I said, because it's a half PPR format, I think the running backs are potentially a little bit closer here, but still more likely than not going to go ahead and take George Pickens. Now, Wilson says, should we drop Rico Dowdle or Blake Corum for Jordan Mason? I'm going to need everybody's help in the chat with this. Like I said, somebody texted me before I went live here with the Christian McCaffrey injury, asking if they should drop Rico Dowdle for Jordan Mason. My initial take was I would rather just have the upside of Rico Dowdle, but please spam the chat. Would you rather have Rico Dowdle or Jordan Mason? Rico Dowdle or Jordan Mason? Who do you want here? Okay. Joel says he would rather have Mason. Rough Time says maybe drop Corum. TB Houston says drop neither. Logan would rather have Dowdle. Kyle would rather have Mason. A Dizzle would rather have Mason. Scoop says Dowdle. So it does look like it's split. I think I would prefer Rico Dowdle. And actually, the majority of people in the chat right now are kind of saying that as well. I know a lot of people are saying Mason. That is surprising. It's just tough because week one, obviously, you're going to get such a good insight of what the role should be for these Dallas Cowboys players. But let's move this over. And our next question coming out from Jaden says, roster reviews, we're just going to do on flockfantasy.com. I don't know if we want to be doing full-blown roster reviews right now. And I will be streaming those roster reviews after the game tonight. You will get to see a full-blown look of the new updated version of flockfantasy.com. I will say the new version's only available to creators right now. It looks like the users are most likely going to be getting this update tomorrow. But can't wait. And yes, we'll be doing all your roster reviews. And like I said, if you use code FLOCK in the past on Underdog, obviously you got our 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. But if you use code FLOCK during the season, you're going to be getting a roster review from me through Underdog Fantasy. And like I said, also Underdog is offering for the game tonight a Travis Kelce special pick of more than less than half a total yard. For tomorrow, a Dak Prescott special pick of more than less than half a total yard. And for Sunday, a Christian McCaffrey special pick of more than less than half a total yard, plus a 30% profit boost token today. I've never seen anything like this. And if you use code FLOCK, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 as well. Plus, yours truly reviewing your team through flockfantasy.com. Just make sure your flockfantasy.com account has the same email address attached to your Underdog Fantasy account. So make sure you take advantage of that. I've literally never seen anything like it before. Now, moving over to our next question. Nick says, if CMC's out, should I start Raheem Mostert or Jordan Mason? So the issue with both running backs is neither RB is going to be a phenomenal pass catcher, right? We are kind of expecting both guys to operate on first and second downs. But what's good with that is they're both in very good offenses. So they both do have a ton of touchdown upside if that is what you want to chase here. Personally, I think more likely than not, I would just go ahead. I would stick with Raheem Mostert for this matchup. The reason being is if you are looking at Raheem, one, we've seen the production before, and two, at the same time, he has a much better matchup. It's going to be a really tough spot, specifically going up against the New York Jets for Jordan Mason. I don't think either running back would catch the ball a ton. Obviously, you have great options at running back if that is what you're choosing here. Now, Mike coming out says, stash Braylon Allen or Ray Davis. I think here we are going to go ahead. We are going to stash Ray Davis between the two of these, my friend. If you're looking at the gap between them, I think if Breece Hall were to go down, you possibly have a higher ceiling with Braylon Allen. I preferred Allen as a prospect. But with that being said, just Breece Hall is so much better of a player than James Cook. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I could see Ray Davis having a role in this offense, even with a healthy James Cook. And I don't necessarily think you're going to be getting that with Allen. Okay. So moving this over to our next one. Emler says, the great, should I trade CMC, Terry, and Ferguson for McBride, DJ Moore, and Breece Hall? So if you wanted to pivot from CMC to Breece Hall, given the fact that it looks like the CMC calf injury and Achilles is lingering a bit here, I wouldn't fault you at all for that. Going from Terry McLaurin to DJ Moore, that's a spot where I do think you're getting an upgrade. Going from Jake Ferguson to Trey McBride, I think you're getting an upgrade there as well. Now, I still probably have Christian McCaffrey ranked ahead of Breece Hall, but you are de-risking there to the healthy running back. You're getting two pretty significant upgrades in other areas of your lineup. So actually probably would make that trade, to be honest with you. Now, Braden says, Harrison or Puka rest of season? If we're looking at Harrison and Puka, I understand Puka was dealing with the knee injury. I understand that Harrison is a much, much better prospect than Puka Nacua. But based off Puka being the best rookie wide receiver of all time last season, I think it's going to be very difficult for me to really pivot off of any. I mean, going to any rookie over Puka Nacua, even if he is a phenomenal prospect, I think you're going to give me, I'm going to take Puka here. Now, Juan says, who scores more fantasy points, Andrews or Kelsey? So I personally have Kelsey ranked rest of season higher than Mark Andrews. And at the same time, I would rather have Travis Kelsey this week over Mark Andrews as well. Okay. Uncle Fresh says Terry, Dell, or Ramondre Stevenson in the flex spot. So I have both Ramondre Stevenson and Terry McLaurin in the flock league. I am probably benching both players, to be honest with you. It's a tough spot to be in, but Ramondre Stevenson is just in an absolutely garbage offense. And at the same time, Terry McLaurin's in a very bad spot. Rookie quarterback, low volume passing attack. I would probably just prefer the player that's going to be in the higher volume offense. I think I am going to take Tank Dell here. Okay. Miles says Brandon Ayuk or Tank Dell in the flex. So obviously you have no Sticky Ricky for week 1. It's kind of irrelevant if Christian McCaffrey plays in my mind for this question. It is a tough matchup for Brandon Ayuk for sure. Going up against Sauce Gardner and the Jets here, it's going to be a much lower scoring Niners offense than what we would usually expect. But still, Tank Dell in my mind is the wide receiver 3 in Houston. The Niners are still a great team. Brandon Ayuk's still a great player. I would go with Ayuk over Dell. Isaac says, I have Achane as my running back 1. Am I cooked? So if you look at like regular drafts that were like occurring on ESPN, their Devon Achane was getting drafted in the middle of round 2. And to be honest with you, at that price point, I'm not a big Devon Achane hater going as a mid RB2. However, in high stakes drafts, you were looking at Achane as a running back that was getting drafted as a mid RB1. So it kind of depends on where you took him. If you're telling me in your regular fantasy football draft, you took Devon Achane in round 4, so you're loaded at wide receiver, you have an elite quarterback or you have an elite tight ends, there, no issues whatsoever. I think you're going to be in a great spot. If you were like in a high stakes drafts where you saw Devon Achane go at the 1-2 turn, there, I'm not nearly as excited about it, to be honest. But Kyler coming out says, going to my second season following you, bro. Love the content. Love the drip. To keep being you, Brody. Much love, my friend. Thank you for stopping by the live stream. And good luck week 1. Good luck, everybody, in here week 1. Daniel, welcome to being a member of the flock. Corrupted Forces says, Dak or Daniels for an 8-team format. If it's honestly, for this week in particular, I know it's crazy to say with Jaden Daniels being a rookie QB here. I think I'm still going to go ahead and take Jaden Daniels. The matchup is so tough going up against Cleveland for Dak Prescott. If you look at Las Vegas sportsbooks at the moment, you actually have them projecting out the Washington Commanders to score more points than the Dallas Cowboys this week. So with that in mind, I think it's a very tough spot to just say, oh yeah, we want the quarterback that's also not going to run the ball in the lower scoring offense. So I would go Daniels this week. The rest of season, if it's a 4-point passing touchdown format, it's very close. 6-point passing touchdown league, I'd rather have Dak. But welcome to being a member of the flock. Happy to see you. Sop Napkin says, should we start Chris Godwin or Jerome Ford? So this is one thing that I'm excited about, why we're going to do all the questions through flockfantasy.com. After this live stream, we're going to start that in the live stream tonight. I just wanted to make sure we can do as many free questions as possible before the season starts. So if you're enjoying the free questions, please go down there, hit that like button. Of course, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be live answering questions every single night on this stream. But like here, when I get these questions, please give me your league settings on flockfantasy.com. Everything's going to be linked up. So I know if it's a PPR format, I know it's a half PPR. I know how many teams are in the league, et cetera, et cetera. But between Chris Godwin and Jerome Ford, I think I'm most likely just going to go ahead and take the running back that should see the 3-down workload. I think I'm more likely than not just going to go ahead and take Jerome Ford. Obviously, it's a tough matchup going up against the Dallas Cowboys, but it kind of is what it is. Now, Bling on top says start Jackson Smith and Jigba, Terry McLaurin, or Najee Harris in a full PPR format. So if we are looking at JSN, this is going to be a wide receiver that a lot of people are very excited about with the change in offensive coordinator, expecting that Jackson Smith-Njigba all of a sudden has more routes, has more snaps, and more targets overall in Seattle. But I don't necessarily want to just go off a projection and immediately say that it's going to be happening this week. If Terry McLaurin were to miss this week, which I'm not expecting, then at that point, I think you could potentially look to go JSN. But I'm sorry, if Tyler Lockett were to miss. But honestly, I probably just play it safe. I go Terry McLaurin in a full PPR format as a wide receiver that's going to get every single target. Now, JL, welcome to being a member of the flock. Happy to have you. I know you're a long-time member. But Luke says, just drafted my redraft team. I'm sorry, Luke, my guy. I'm probably not going to be able to do full-blown roster reviews during this stream. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a ton of roster reviews every single night on the live stream going forward. If you want your roster reviewed for free, I would probably head over to Underdog Fantasy. You're going to be able to submit your roster for free on flockfantasy.com. If you sign up to Underdog Fantasy and make a $10 deposit starting from today on, anybody who signed up before, obviously you got the draft guide. But if you sign up from today on, you're going to be getting a Christian McCaffrey special pick'em more than less than half a total yard for Monday night, a Travis Kelce special pick'em more than less than half a total yard for tonight, a Dak Prescott special pick'em more than less than half a total yard for tomorrow night or Saturday, whenever the hell it is, plus a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000, plus a 30% profit token that you can use in something today. And you will also get your team fully reviewed from yours truly on flockfantasy.com. Just make sure you have an account on flockfantasy.com that matches the account that you sign up to Underdog Fantasy with today and used code FLOCK on Underdog with at least a $10 deposit. But let's move this back over. Make sure you take advantage of that because I legitimately have never seen Underdog run out this many promos. Like, I'm not even a massive pick'ems guy, but I've been submitting pick'em slips every single day this week because the promos are just freaking crazy. But Leroy, welcome to being member of the flock. Cosmic, happy to see you, says start Reed Godwin or Xavier Worthy. So typically I am a little bit hesitant to go through and just immediately throw out the rookie wide receiver into our starting lineup week one. Obviously, Harrison, Neighbors, those are special prospects. And I think you really can just make an argument. Mason, these guys are going to see massive target shares. You just absolutely have to play them. In the case of Xavier Worthy, maybe it's going to be a little bit of a tougher spot. But you have no Hollywood Brown. The game happens tonight as well. If you were looking at my wide receiver rankings on the site, I have it listed out where Chris Godwin is ahead of Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is the last guy on this list. It really comes down to, are you going with Worthy or no? You know what? I'm not going to go with the rookie. I'm just going to play it safe. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Chris Godwin this week. Just play it safe. Take Godwin. Ben says start Terry McLaurin or James Conner at the flex in a full PPR format. So I actually kind of have this same question in my own league this week. Personally, I am starting James Conner. I think later in the season, when we have a better idea of what we're going to be expecting from Jaden Daniels, and at the same time, Trey Benson looks to expand his role, then at that point, I think you can go ahead. You can take McLaurin over Conner, but for the time being, you for sure have to go ahead. You for sure have to take a James Conner because Trey Benson's not really going to be a factor at the beginning of the season. Thomas says, why is Najee so high in the community rankings? So the community rankings on flockfantasy.com definitely need to be filtered out just a bit. So just to let you know, on flockfantasy.com, the expert rankings, which are behind a paywall, my rankings are behind a paywall as well. Those are the accumulation of all the creators on the site. Those rankings I'd highly recommend using if you have a paid account. The community rankings, just every time somebody gets prompted with a matchup, would you rather have this player or this player? We get that data point and then it goes into the community rankings. Since I hadn't been promoting flockfantasy.com as of late, we didn't have that many users, so we weren't getting enough data points. But going into the season, we're going to do everything through flockfantasy.com. So the community rankings will iron themselves out. And if Najee looks weird in the ranking right now, that should be fixed. But Derek, welcome to being a member of the flock. I know you've been out here forever, my friend. But Blake says Nico Collins and Ezekiel Elliott for Saquon Barkley. It's a great example of a 2-for-1 deal that you should be looking to make. Literally, this is like exactly what I was talking about in the sell high Ezekiel Elliott video earlier in the week, saying to try your best to send him in that 2-for-1 deal, get the player back that you're going to be able to start every single week, regardless of matchup. In the case of Saquon, bell cow, elite offense. Could not be more excited. I really do like Nico Collins. And I used this analogy on the live stream the other night, and I've said this a bunch, and I'll say it a bunch all year because I think it's the perfect analogy. If you're trading Nico Collins for Saquon Barkley, you're trading a Porsche for a Ferrari, right? Both great pieces, but there was a massive value disparity there. And when you add in a player like Ezekiel Elliott, what you do in that deal is you go, hey, I know I'm trading my Porsche for your Ferrari, but I'll add in a little dangling tree from the windshield to make the car smell good. It doesn't freaking matter, right? It's almost worthless in the grand scheme of things with the overall trade. So just get the best player. Absolutely love it. Clear up that roster spot. Go pick up Jordan Mason off the waiver wire. Donald says, is Christian McCaffrey going to play? Right now, I am expecting McCaffrey does play this week. 100% Jordan Mason is somebody that you need to roster. And if McCaffrey were to miss, I think this week Jordan Mason were to project out to be a mid to low end RB2. The issue is it would be a very tough matchup against the Jets. Jordan Mason isn't a great pass catcher. Hopefully he improves in that area, but he does only have 3 receptions through his NFL career, and he wasn't a great pass catcher at Georgia Tech. Now, our next question coming out from, I believe, Michael says, Brian Robinson Jr. or Keon Coleman in a full PPR 12-team league. So I think Keon Coleman has all the upside in the world. In a bunch of underdog drafts this offseason, I took him just because I think he could be a monster in the second half of the season. And it's a really good spot against Arizona. It's a great matchup. The Bills should be scoring a lot of points. Curtis Samuel is coming off a turf toe. So if I was drafting in like, say, a tournament, or if I was going to be submitting a DFS lineup, I think Keon Coleman does have some sneaky upside, and we should be really excited about him there. But just in your regular fantasy football draft, I'm probably not going to be relying on Keon week 1. I think Keon falls into the same bucket that you have with some of the other rookie receivers. I would throw Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, maybe Brian Thomas Jr., all kind of in the same bucket, where these are receivers that you roster and you're very excited about their late season upside, but you're probably not wanting to play them week 1. Now, Fester says Xavier Worthy or Cortland Sutton at the flex in a full 14-team full PPR format. So based off the fact that you have no Hollywood Brown, and obviously the Chiefs are just going to score so many more points than what you should have in Denver, I think I am very comfortably going to go ahead and take Xavier Worthy over Cortland Sutton there. Now, with that being said, I definitely want to remind you, if you are playing anybody tonight, right, you have somebody that's good to go on Thursday. You never put them in your flex spot. Say you figured, okay, I have Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and Xavier Worthy this week. I want to play Xavier Worthy. He's my flex. No, you move CeeDee Lamb down to your flex. You put Worthy in there at wide receiver 2, just in case anything happens later in the week to one of your other wide receivers. You have the flexibility possibly to pivot over to a running back if need be. So never play a Thursday night player in your flex spot. Just move him to wide receiver 2. But I would rather have Worthy over Cortland Sutton for sure. Now, Ray Charles, longtime member of the flock, says, second flex spot, are we going to go with Zamir or Worthy in a full PPR format? So looking at my rankings on the site right now, I do have Zamir White ranked ahead of Xavier Worthy. Honestly, that may be incorrect. Let me go ahead and pull up what we have with the Underdog Pick'ems here this week. I think it will kind of be interesting to see where they have them projected out, because Worthy's just going to be in so much of a better offense, right? So, sorry, let me pull this up. So right now, if you look at the projections for Xavier Worthy on Underdog, they have him at about 8.5 fantasy points for his higher lower. You can see all his other projections here as well. It looks like most people are taking the lower on 3.5 receptions, because you do get the 1.1x multiplier too if you say that Worthy's going to have 4 or more. If you look at Zamir White, on the other hand, they do have Zamir White actually up at 10.05 fantasy points for his projection. So maybe I was right to rank Zamir over Worthy. My hesitation, obviously, is if you're in that full PPR format, then maybe you're a little, if you're in a full PPR league, maybe you're a little more inclined to go with the receiver, because I don't expect Zamir to have really any receiving upside. Runner says Henry touchdown should be a free play tonight, in my opinion. I actually took the Derrick Henry rushing touchdown mark tonight. The reason being is I'm sure y'all see like these weird little things circling the running backs here. Underdog has what's called vulture protection. So if you take your player to score a rushing touchdown and they end up getting vultured at the goal line, so say you took Derrick Henry to score a rushing touchdown, Lamar steals it from him, you actually get your underdog credit back, where you are technically a winner of that. So I am definitely taking a lot of these players score rushing touchdowns just because I want to take advantage of that promo. And like I said, please make sure you take advantage of those underdog promos. They never do this many. And I mean, not only do you have the Vulture one, you have a 30% profit boost for today. If you use code FLOCK, you're also going to get the Travis Kelce special pick of more than less than half a total yard, a Dak Prescott special pick of more than less than half a total yard, a Christian McCaffrey special pick of more than less than half a total yard. Plus, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And I will break down your fantasy football team for you through flockfantasy.com. You just have to make sure that you signed up to Underdog with the same account email address that you have on flockfantasy.com. So when I go through to credit those accounts with free vouchers. So just today, right now, click the link in the description, comment section, live chat, use code FLOCK on Underdog, make that $10 deposit, make your account on flockfantasy.com. You don't have to buy anything on flockfantasy.com, and then you'll be credited later on with that free team review voucher, which I'll keep you updated with. Now, our next question coming out from Bruva says, what are your thoughts on Dalvin Cook for the future in a full PPR format? I think Dalvin Cook has no upside. I think Dalvin Cook is a player that potentially you're looking at playing spoiler for Rico Dowdle, playing spoiler for Ezekiel Elliott. But in terms of if Dalvin Cook is actually going to make a difference himself, most likely not. Like, I don't see a world where you are putting Dalvin Cook into your starting lineup. I don't see where the upside comes from. And Colby says, worthy about to have a game. Hook 'em horns. You better believe I'm rooting for it. I'm definitely rooting for it. Brian says, I took Andrews higher 4.5 receptions. Pacheco to have the rushing touchdown. Like I said, don't mind at all taking anybody with the rushing touchdown because Underdog has the vulture protection. Henry with the rushing touchdown. Kelce with half a receiving yard. And Mahomes lower than 37 pass attempts. Yeah, I actually paired my Derrick Henry rushing touchdown with the Travis Kelce promo as well for him to have that receiving yard, because I stacked like a couple of the things together. I stacked the vulture protection. I stacked the free Kelce thing, and then I just included one other. It was like $10 to win $70. So I was just definitely taking, just like I said, take advantage of the promos. Jessica says, Rice, Dell, or McLaurin for the flex in a full PPR format. So if you look at my rankings on the site this week, you'll see that I have Rice and Dell closest between the two. I'm not considering Terry McLaurin over either of these options. I think based off no Hollywood Brown, you kind of have to take Rashee Rice. But I do want to reiterate, if you're playing anybody that goes tonight, make sure that you are going to be putting them into your wide receiver 2 slot and not your flex. DJP says, flex David Montgomery or Keenan Allen. So David Montgomery has a phenomenal matchup against the Rams' banged up defensive front, plus buying the best offensive line in the league, plus Jahmyr Gibbs coming off the hamstring. Keenan Allen dealing with the foot injury himself. Obviously, it's a little frustrating if it's a full PPR format, and David Montgomery is just going to have absolutely nothing when it comes to his receiving role. But I still more likely than not am going to be taking David Montgomery here over Keenan Allen, even in that full PPR league. Now, Michael says Ladd McConkey or Keon Coleman as a flex. Here, this is a very interesting question. Like I said, I think both players kind of fall in a similar range where I'm not super excited about starting either of them week 1, but at the same time, I think they have a crazy high ceiling for later in the season. So I definitely want to roster them for sure. Now, in terms of who we are looking to start this week, I probably go in the direction of, oh my gosh. I probably go with Keon Coleman. Keon was healthy through training camp. Josh Allen was as well. Let me see if Underdog does have projections with them real quick. I have no idea what to expect with them for sure. So I would for sure be looking to like avoid the, I would not be taking any of these pick'ems on Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, because I don't know what to expect. They do have Keon Coleman for 6.65 fantasy points. And they have Ladd McConkey at 7.95. So they do have Ladd McConkey higher than Keon Coleman in their projections this week. And because you can actually go higher, lower on those projections, I do put a decent amount of value into them. So honestly, if it's a full PPR format, I think Ladd has more target volume. I know Underdog's saying that like you get a higher touchdown multiplier with Keon. I would assume that Keon has more touchdown upside based off the overall implied team totals there, but I don't know, my friend. That's a tough spot. George says, I am McCaffrey. Would you trade Charbonnet for Jordan Mason? So I want to be on record. I think that Zach Charbonnet is a much better running back than Jordan Mason. I think both that as an athlete, as a rusher, and a receiver, I think in every area of the game. I think McCaffrey's much better than Kenneth Walker. So in terms of just like a straight up situation in drafts, I would have way rather had Zach Charbonnet over Jordan Mason. Now, obviously with the McCaffrey injury, this does kind of bridge the gap in value between the two of them. You're not starting Charbonnet unless Walker's injured. I don't know, my friend. I think you could very easily go ahead and I'm probably just going to keep Zach Charbonnet. I probably don't want to overreact. If McCaffrey was ruled out this week, then at that point, I think you can make the trade, but I'm still expecting McCaffrey to be good to go. But John says flex either Kamara, McLaurin, Flowers. Also just picked up Jordan Mason off the waiver wire in case CMC goes down. Love it, my friend. I think I'm going to go ahead and flex Alvin Kamara here. If you are looking at Kamara, I think you're in a really good spot to just expect the target volume to be there. Not only the target volume to be there, but it's a good matchup against Carolina where they can run the ball in the second half. Derek says, oh no, he doesn't have super chat anymore. Yeah, so I have turned super chats off. I'm not going to do super chats anymore at all. We are mainly just going to be answering all questions through flockfantasy.com, which you can purchase a question there. It's like $5 if you want to ask a start sit question. And also, like I said, we're doing roster reviews through flockfantasy.com as well. And if you wanted, the cheapest way you can get that roster review is by depositing $10 on Underdog Fantasy. Has to be with an account that started September 5th or after. If you had one previously, you got the draft guide. Now our promo is the roster reviews. But also, if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get the Travis Kelce special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for the game tonight. The Christian McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for the game Monday. The Dak Prescott special pick'em as well, plus the 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000, plus the roster review, and plus the 30% profit token. I've never seen Underdog do anything close to this in terms of promos. So I would definitely make sure you are going ahead, just depositing $10 on Underdog with the link in the live chat. Take advantage of all that and get in on the promos for sure. Now, Hi says, In Your Girl is diabolical. If you watch the Flock League vlog, you'll know why our team names In Your Girl. But anyway, Braden says, DJ Moore or Deebo Samuel for the flex. If we assume that you have McCaffrey banged up for week 1, and obviously you have no Sticky Ricky for week 1 either, I think you can go ahead. I think you can be really excited about Deebo there. Obviously, it's a tough matchup going up against the Jets, but you possibly have Brandon Ayuk to take attention from Sauce. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Deebo. I'm going to go Deebo. Amongst this, is the Trade Finder free on flockfantasy.com? Yes, the Trade Finder is free. There's a bunch of stuff that's free on the site. Okay. Now, let's move this over. Our next question coming out from from Marco says, Amari or Brian Thomas Jr. with Ramsey probably out. I would for sure be going ahead and taking Amari over Brian Thomas Jr. I think, yes, it's a toughish matchup. It should be a lower scoring game for Amari. But in terms of Brian Thomas Jr., I'm throwing him in the same bucket as like Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, player I'm super excited for later in the season. I think has a ton of upside and I for sure want to hold, but not somebody that I'm looking to start this week. But he says Waddle or Metcalf. I'm going to go ahead. I will take Jalen Waddle. I'm actually starting Jalen Waddle in the Flock League this week. Send up a prayer for me. But nonetheless, if I am looking at Jalen Waddle here, I think this is a spot where you can very easily just see the Miami Dolphins dropping the most points in the league this week. DK Metcalf going up against Denver. If Tyler Lockett were to be out, all of a sudden he does become a little more appealing. But they're going up against the Denver Broncos, so I don't necessarily know if we should expect a ton of passing volume in the second half. Mr. Shock says, let's get this to 600 likes. Yes, if you have not done so already, go down there, hit that like button. We're answering as many questions as we can for completely free here. Make sure you drop a like on this stream. Burnt Toast says, what are your thoughts? I dropped Marshawn Lloyd for Rico Dowdle. So I actually really do like Marshawn Lloyd now that you have A.J. Dillon on the season-ending IR. But with that being said, Marshawn Lloyd has no path to being viable without a Josh Jacobs injury, whereas you could potentially see Rico Dowdle be a viable play even without Zeke getting injured. So I would rather have Rico Dowdle over Marshawn Lloyd. I think that's a great call. Okay. Chris says, are we going to go with Rashee Rice or Jalen Waddle? So like I said, I'm a little bit biased. I do have Waddle in the flock league. Rice obviously is in a very good situation where you have no Hollywood Brown. But if you look at the implied team totals of these respective offenses, right now Vegas is projecting Kansas City to score about 24.5 points this week, whereas Miami's actually supposed to be at about 26.5. I think Jalen Waddle is a better wide receiver than Rashee Rice. I think he has more big play potential. So I'm going to go Jalen Waddle over Rice. Brendo says, happy BR, pick 2 to start, Najee, Dell, or Mostert. I'm for sure going to go with Tank Dell here. Between Najee and Mostert, I expect both running backs to be in a committee. I expect Mostert to be in the much better offense between the two. So I will start Mostert over Najee Harris. Okay, so Max says Jalen Waddle or Devontae Adams. Thank you. No, thank you, my friend. So if you are looking at Adams, should be a very low-scoring offense in general, of course, where right now the Devontae Adams implied team total is at about 18.5 points, whereas the Miami team's up at about 26.5. That's an 8-point difference. I think I'm honestly going to go ahead and take Jalen Waddle over Devontae Adams. I think I'm going to take Waddle over Adams, as crazy as that may sound. As it may sound. Now, TNS says Zach Moss or Jerome Ford. I think that there is that outside chance that Zach Moss is just the full bell cow running back in Cincinnati, dominates here from a usage perspective, and you should be extremely excited about what you are going to be getting rest of season. But I don't know what's going to happen, right? I think there's also that chance that you end up getting a pretty large role for Chase Brown. So whenever you have no Nick Chubb here for sure week 1, even if it's a tough matchup for Jerome Ford and the Browns should be lower scoring than the Bengals, I would still rather have Jerome Ford over Zach Moss. Fabi says, your thoughts on Jameson? Love you. Love you, my friend. Here, I think that Jameson Williams is like a great pick in underdog drafts where they're best ball, but in your regular fantasy football league, I think that Jameson Williams could be a great real life receiver to help out the Detroit Lions. I think he can stretch NFL defenses, create space underneath for Sam Laporta, for Amon-Ra St. Brown, for the running backs here to just have space, be able to draw targets, be able to face less stacked boxes. But in terms of the target share you can reliably expect on from Jameson Williams, I don't think it's going to be there. So in your regular fantasy football draft, I think Jameson's kind of going to be a boom or bust play that it's very difficult to project him out as a starter. I would for sure not start Jameson Williams this week. You can see my rankings on the site. See, he's nowhere near the top, even though it's a great matchup for Jameson where this should be the highest scoring offense in the league. But I think he does have upside from week to week perspective. I think he could be a good real life receiver, but there's a difference between providing real life value and providing fantasy football value. But Gloom, welcome to being a member of the flock. Happy to have you. Skull says, flex Rice or Ayuk, full PPR. Much love, man. Okay, here Rice and Ayuk's going to be a little bit tough. Obviously, Ayuk does have the very tough matchup going up against the Jets. I think you can potentially make an argument to just go ahead and take... Can everybody spam the chat? Help me out with this. If you look at my wide receiver rankings right now, I do have Rashee Rice and Brandon Ayuk within 3 slots of each other. Everybody spam the chat. Would you rather play Rice or Ayuk this week? Now, I will reiterate, of course, if you're playing Rice tonight, he plays on Thursday, so you're not going to be putting him into the flex spot. Instead, you'd move him to wide receiver 2. Whoever your wide receiver 2 is, you'd move them down to the flex. But we got Rice, Ayuk, Rice, Ayuk, Rice. Okay, so I do have Rashee Rice higher in my rankings as well. So I think we go ahead and stick with that. I mean, we can also, of course, check what is over there on Underdog real quick. They currently have Rashee Rice at... Come on. 8 targets, higher, lower. 12.5 fantasy points. Whereas if you look at Brandon Ayuk, they currently have Brandon Ayuk at 9.95 fantasy points and only 6.5 targets, higher or lower. So it does look like on Underdog, the lines are higher for Rice as well. But of course, if you wanted to take any of those, like I said, I would definitely make sure you are taking advantage of the promos this week, because you have the Vulture promo, you have the 30 here, you can see it here. You have the 30% profit boost promo as well. You're only able to use $10 on each one of these promos, but when they're doing like 7 of them, that's freaking massive. And yeah, like I said, if you use code FLOCK on Underdog as well, you're going to be getting the Travis Kelce special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for tonight's game. You're also going to be getting the Dak Prescott special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for the Dallas game. And only with code FLOCK will you also be getting the Christian McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for Monday night. And if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. You can take advantage of all the other promos on Underdog, and you will get your team broken down from me through flockfantasy.com. All you have to do is make sure you sign up to flockfantasy.com with the same account that you signed up to Underdog Fantasy with to take advantage of that. But please make sure you do it, because I've never seen Underdog have this many promos before, and they're really just doing it because it's NFL kickoff. You're not going to get too many shots at this. Young Krelos has just used the Kelce pick'em last night. Yeah, I saved my Kelce pick'em until today. I stacked it up with the Derrick Henry rushing touchdown since they had the Vulture promo as well. Nike Niners says Burrow versus New England or Goff versus the Rams. I think it's a very good question. I mean, it looks like Jamar Chase is going to be playing this week, which obviously is very exciting here. But with that being said, they're going up against New England. They could very easily just run the ball in the second half. If you look at sportsbooks at the moment, this is actually something I need to update on flockfantasy.com. I have Goff ranked behind Burrow. I can't justify it. The game's going to have so many more points scored with the Rams and Lions than they will with the Chiefs, Patriots. It's not like either quarterback has a ton of rushing upside. So I initially ranked Burrow over Goff. Looking at my rankings, I'm going to have to update them on the site right now, because I would rather have Goff over Burrow. But happy to see you out. We have Cheekiest Clown. Long time no see. Thank you for coming out. Now, Robbie says, pick one, Stevenson, Ford, or Jalen Warren. Stevenson, absolutely garbage offense. And you have no Nick Chubb. Just give me Jerome Ford. I think between Ford and Stevenson, they have similar roles. But in the case of Stevenson, there's just going to be so many fewer points scored in New England than what you have in Cleveland. Michael says, what are the coins around my running back? So if you're on Underdog looking at the pick'ems, they're not coins around your running backs. I mean, they're kind of coins, but they're that Vulture protection. So this says, like, if you take Derrick Henry to get a rushing touchdown and he gets vultured at the goal line, you still win that pick'em. So it's just another one of the promos that Underdog's doing. They're just putting it around the players so you know which guys that it comes with. And it comes with every running back, but with the rushing touchdown. Ryan says, Flowers or London week 1. So we did get news that Kyle Pitts and his hamstring is going to be completely fine, so we don't necessarily need to worry about that. But I still think I will personally go ahead and take Drake London over Zay Flowers. I know maybe you're getting antsy wanting to go ahead and see if we could potentially get the player in our lineup today, but I don't know. I think we go with London. Tio says, who should we start between Swift or Neighbors in a non-PPR league for the flex? Congrats on 230,000 subs. Much love, my friend. Really do appreciate you. So in a full PPR format, I do have Malik Neighbors ranked over DeAndre Swift relatively easily, to be honest with you, even if I'm a little bit worried about going through and putting rookies into our lineup. In a non-PPR league, it's going to be a little bit tougher. There should definitely be more points scored. In Chicago, non-PPR format, you're kind of chasing touchdown upside. We can look at what the touchdown odds are on Underdog at the moment. They have DeAndre Swift for a touchdown, a 1.22x multiplier. They have Neighbors for a touchdown at a 1.42x multiplier. So they have Swift more likely to score the touchdown. They have Neighbors at higher, lower 63.5 receiving yards. whereas they have Swift at higher lower 60.5 total yards. So it's a very close spot if you are looking at the projections. I think you most likely have a higher ceiling with Malik Neighbors, though, so I probably do go Neighbors. But Pedro, longtime member of the flock, happy to see you, my friend. And Boo Gently says, PPR league, you're going to start Neighbors or Rice this week. I think it's a relatively easy spot to just go ahead and take Rashee Rice with no Hollywood Brown. And like we discussed previously, I do want to just be a little hesitant with the rookies this week. I'm not telling you that you can't start them, but I definitely would like to see it before we just immediately jam them in. Now, Timothy says full PPR, Keenan Allen or Brian Thomas Jr. for the flex. So no, Brian Thomas Jr. should be in a very exciting game environment, and I'm very excited about him for rest of season. But I do think I just go ahead and I just take the side of I think we go with the side of Keenan Allen and just take the target volume. Okay. Now, let's move this over. Brandon says, flex Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers. If I'm looking at Andrews versus Flowers, 9 times out of 10, I want to be going with the wide receiver. If you're in a position where you are considering flexing Mark Andrews, it must mean you have Sam Laporta. It must mean you have Travis Kelce. In that case, I would highly recommend you just going through and selling Mark Andrews. But I probably would start Mark Andrews over Zay Flowers. I think Andrews is one of the most exciting players this week. And yeah, checking in on the projections that you have for them tonight. On Underdog, you have the 1.41x multiplier if Andrews scores a touchdown. He's at higher, lower 11.5 fantasy points. Whereas Zay Flowers, they have higher, lower 10.5 fantasy points. Yeah, so Underdog agrees to go ahead and take Zay Flowers there. But I'm sorry, to take Mark Andrews there. Okay. So now, Preston, welcome to being a member of the flock. Happy to see you. My guy, happy to see you. Sleepy says, just got offered Rashee Rice for Zay Flowers straight up in a full PPR format. Do I smash accept? 100%. Based off the reports that have been coming around with the Rashee Rice suspension, where it seems like the NFL is not going to be doing anything until you actually have legal action, I would just go ahead and I would take Rice over Flowers. Callie's Kid says, what's up, Mason? Do we start Rice tonight or Godwin at the flex in a full PPR format? Much love, my friend. With no Hollywood Brown in a much better offense, I think it's an easy spot to go ahead and start Rashee Rice. But I do want to reiterate, since it's a Thursday night game, make sure you put Rice in there at wide receiver 2 and move whoever your wide receiver 2 is down to the flex. Now, Manuel says Dobbs, Shakir, or Terry McLaurin. So in the case of Buffalo and the case of Green Bay, it is so difficult to project out what the target distribution is going to be with these wide receiver cores. So what I'm more likely than not going to look to do is I'm actually just going to go with the guy that you can guarantee targets with. I will go with Terry McLaurin, and I would imagine that there's a pretty big disparity with these guys when it comes to the projections here. If you're looking at Terry McLaurin, Underdog has him higher, lower 60.5 receiving yards. In the case of Shakir, they have Shakir 44.5, which is honestly higher than I was expecting. And they have Dobbs at 40.5. So yeah, they have McLaurin as the highest as well. But of course, if you wanted to take any of these pick'ems over on Underdog Fantasy, I would highly recommend taking advantage of the promos right now. Or if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get the Travis Kelce special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for tonight. The Dak Prescott special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard as well. A Christian McCaffrey special pick'em for Monday night, more than less than half a total yard, plus a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000, plus the 30% profit boost token that you can use as well. And if you use code FLOCK on Underdog on an account starting September 5th and make at least a $10 deposit, you will get a free team review from myself through flockfantasy.com. All you have to do is make sure that you have an account on flockfantasy.com that is the same email address of the account that you signed up to Underdog Fantasy with, and you'll be credited this weekend with that free roster review. But yeah, just please make sure you set up the same email address, because if you don't, I'm not going to have a way to get it to you. But Kieran says, ready for another great year ahead. Let's go, Flockers. Smash the like. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I mean, being out here with us since pretty much 2020. But Gloom says, flex Pacheco or Walker, and does CMC look good for this week? I am planning on starting McCaffrey this week in leagues that I have him. Now, I will say I for sure recommend going ahead. And you know what I just realized? Oh my gosh. In the Flock League, I'm going up against McCaffrey this week. Never mind, ladies and gentlemen. McCaffrey ain't playing. Shut it down. All right. Ooh, this is... Obviously, I do think McCaffrey's playing. Hopefully he's limited in the game for myself, selfishly. But I do think that CMC looks good to go. Between Isaiah Pacheco and Kenneth Walker, I probably play Pacheco, but don't put him in the flex. Put him at running back too. That way you can make an adjustment if you need to later in the week. Now, Christian says Deebo Samuel or Rashee Rice. I think that this is a very interesting question based off the tough matchup that you have for Deebo Samuel going up against the Jets. If you look at my rankings on the site this week, you will see that I have Deebo and Rice inside the same tier. But with that being said, dear God, I still probably go Deebo Samuel, especially if you think that McCaffrey's limited whatsoever. I think you're in a good spot. Bo says, should we play Mark Andrews or Dalton Kincaid? If you have both of these tight ends, I would highly recommend selling one and going and getting an elite level running back if you can. Package him with your RB2. Go get an upgrade there. Between Andrews, Kincaid, I probably rank Andrews higher. They would definitely be in a similar tier for me. But Andrews, you have the longer track record with, of course. Now, Peyton says Rachaad White or Jalen Waddle for the flex. I think potentially with Rachaad White, you just have a very high floor with the overall volume that you're going to get. Shouldn't be too bad of a matchup going up against Washington. He'll have the receiving volume at the very minimum, and the Bucs project outscore about 23.5 points. So when in doubt, I'm going to go with the running back with a very stable workload with the 3-down role that we can easily project. Now, moving this over, Caden says Zay Flowers or Rashee Rice as the flex. I will go with Rashee Rice, but I do want to reiterate, plays on Thursday, so please make sure you put him at wide receiver 2, not inside the starting lineup. Cole says London or Achane in a full PPR format. If your options are London, Achane, your team is either stacked or you're playing in an extremely shallow league. Between London, Achane, I'm more likely than not just going to go ahead and take Devon Achane against the Jags. It is a great matchup where right now you do have the Miami Dolphins supposedly projected outscore one of, I think they're maybe the third highest projected offense this week. Landon says, is Keon Coleman going to go off? I think Keon Coleman's a great example of somebody that I want on my roster. I think he has a very high ceiling for rest of season, but not somebody that I'm expecting to rely upon this week. If you're looking to rely upon Keon Coleman this week, I think you may be in a world of pain. I mean, with all these rookies, you should have great options. It's week 1. We're not dealing with injuries. So with that in mind, I don't think it can hurt you. Like, what's the worst case scenario? You put Keon Coleman on the bench. You put Brian Thomas Jr. on the bench. They pop off and you go, oh crap, I got a rookie wide receiver breaking out and I can start him week 2. Like, just throw him on the bench, see what happens. And don't panic at all if they start a little slow. They are rookie receivers. Now, obviously with Neighbors, with Harrison, they're such good prospects. You just have to go through and throw them in. With Xavier Worthy, you're definitely considering playing him as well, just because it is such a good spot with no Hollywood Brown in one of the best offenses in the league. Spencer says Coleman, 8 receptions, 79 yards. Book it. I would love to see it. Max says DJ Moore or Zay Flowers in a full PPR format. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and take DJ Moore. If you look at DJ Moore versus Zay Flowers and the projections that you have for their respective offenses, what's very surprising is you actually currently have the Chicago Bears projected to score more points than the Baltimore Ravens this week. I think a lot of that has to do with just the fact that the Chiefs have a very good defense, of course. I mean, that's one of the main reasons they were able to win the Super Bowl last year. So I think we go ahead. We take DJ Moore. I think Zay Flowers is the second option in the Baltimore Ravens offense behind Mark Andrews. Whereas I think you actually have DJ Moore as the number one option in Chicago and what projects to be a higher scoring offense this week. Now, Jack says, are you drafting DJ Moore or DK Metcalf in a full PPR format? So these were guys that I had pretty much back-to-back in my rankings all year, but looking at the reports that we received regarding Keenan Allen and how Keenan Allen doesn't look like he's trending in the right direction for this season, and also looking at how high Vegas already is on the Chicago Bears offense, I think we can go ahead and I think we can take DJ Moore here. Okay. Viper says drafted Neighbors at the 503, Flowers at the 610. Who are we going to start at the flex in a full PPR format? So if you look at my flex rankings this week on the site, I do have Malik Neighbors and Zay Flowers ranked essentially back-to-back. If you go over and look at the Underdog projected pick'ems of what you have for them right now, when I have guys ranked back-to-back, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to give you a great answer here. Underdog has Zay Flowers at 54.5 receiving yards, higher, lower. They have Malik Neighbors at 63.5 receiving yards. So I do have Neighbors ranked one spot higher in my own rankings. On Underdog, the projections are higher for Neighbors as well. I actually wouldn't mind going with the fewer 63.5 receiving yards just for this week. Or honestly, the fewer 22.5 receiving yards for a single reception. I'm going to build out a pick'em entry on stream probably tomorrow. And this will definitely be included. But anyway, I think you probably do want to start Malik Neighbors. But of course, if you wanted to check out any of these pick'ems over on Underdog, I know I'm being annoying, but you really need to take advantage because they don't offer promos like this very often. Right now on Underdog, they have the Vulture promo where if you take a running back to score a rushing touchdown and he gets vultured at the goal line, you have that guarantee that it counts still. So you don't have to worry about it. You have the 30% profit boost as well. If you use code FLOCK, you get a Christian McCaffrey special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. For tonight, you have a Travis Kelce special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. You also get an additional Dak Prescott special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. If you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. If you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a free team review from myself over on flockfantasy.com. All you have to do is make sure that you have that account set up on Underdog September 5th or after. You made a $10 deposit, and that email address used to set up that Underdog account, you have the same email address on flockfantasy.com registered to an account. You don't have to have a paid account on flockfantasy.com. You will be granted that voucher this weekend for the free team review, but you need to have the email addresses lined up or I'm not going to be able to get it for you. Okay. But Spencer, welcome to being a member of the flock. My friend Mark, longtime member, happy to see you. Jordan, welcome. D-Dubs, welcome. Happy to have y'all. And let's see if we can find any questions from these guys. D-Tub says, let's go flock. Let's kill it this year. You rock, Mason. Happy BR. We're going to go with Rome or Christian Kirk. So I think Rome is a player I would rather have over Christian Kirk rest of season. I think you have an extremely high ceiling with Rome Odunze rest of year, but specifically for week 1, Christian Kirk does have a really good matchup going up against Miami, where it should be a very high scoring game where Brian Thomas Jr. is a rookie as well. So I think I'm going to go ahead and take the safety of Christian Kirk. D-Rose says Amari Keenan or Zamir White for the flex spot. I personally am just going to go ahead and take Amari Cooper if it is a full PPR format. When we are hosting all these questions through flockfantasy.com, it's going to be so much better that I can actually know the scoring of the questions that y'all are asking for. And I do want to reiterate, if you're asking any questions in the live chat right now, if you include the scoring, I can give you a much better answer. But anyway, looking at Keenan versus Zamir, I don't know. I just go Amari Cooper. Go Amari Cooper. It's a lower scoring game, but Amari just has such a safe target share. Now, Chase says, start one in the flex. Happy BR, Higgins, Kirk, or JSN. I'm going to go with T. Higgins. It does seem like you actually have Jamar Chase good to go this week. Thank God. But Higgins still should have a respectable role in a very high scoring offense. And we've seen the production before. We've seen a higher ceiling than Christian Kirk has, and we've seen a higher floor than JSN has. Theory, thank you for the dono, my friend. And I see a question, someone coming out and asking how bad the weather is right now in Arrowhead. I can pull up and see if we get some clarity on this. I will say I have seen the Chiefs Stadium. I have been to Kansas City. Okay. Let's look up weather Kansas. Let's look up weather Chiefs on Twitter and see what's happening right now. Breaking: the Chiefs and Ravens warm-ups have been delayed due to weather conditions. Kickoff could potentially be pushed back. Ooh. This is getting spicy, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like we have more questions to answer here. Yeah, heavy rainfall right now at Arrowhead and some thunder heard. Ravens-Chiefs kickoff is still right now at 8:30. This is going to be a nasty, nasty game. This is exciting. Okay. Margaret says heavy rain until 7 p.m. It sounds like it maybe just started raining here. Yeah, rain delay draft party. Maybe we can get in a draft. Simon says, do I risk starting the Ravens defense tonight? Obviously, if it's horrendous weather, all of a sudden you should expect it to be a lower scoring game, a sloppier game overall, which is good for the respective defenses. But with that being said, I think it's still a situation that I'm not starting a defense against Patrick Mahomes. I don't care how good the defense is. I don't care how bad the weather is. I don't want any of that mess. Okay. Officer says Rice or Waddle for the flex spot. I was going to go Waddle before the weather reports. After the weather reports, I think it's for sure going to be a Jalen Waddle here. Peter says we got to sit one between Javonte Ford and Calvin Ridley. I'm for sure playing Jerome Ford here. Really, the question comes down to Calvin Ridley versus Javonte Williams. I know people are very excited about Javonte. My thought process is this does project out to be a pretty low scoring offense here in Denver. Not only is it going to be a very low scoring offense, but at the same time, we don't know exactly what the role is going to be. So if we don't know exactly what the role is going to be for Javonte Williams, where you could potentially have a decent spot for Jaleel to potentially expand, I don't know. I would rather probably just go in a full PPR format with Calvin Ridley. I think Javonte has upside this season, and I'm not trying to talk down on Javonte, but I think in these uncertain backfields where we don't know exactly what the split's going to be, it can't hurt to wait, because I'm pretty damn sure that Calvin Ridley is going to be running a route on every single Will Levis dropback. Like I'm pretty confident in that. And also, if you look at current projections, sportsbooks do have a much higher projected total for the Tennessee Titans offense than Denver. Now, Brandon says Rashee Rice or Malik Neighbors. So assuming that the weather clears up here, which is going to be something to monitor over the next hour, I personally am expecting Rice to be the guy over Malik Neighbors. I think it'd be a very tough spot to come out here and say to take the rookie receiver over potentially the wide receiver one for Patrick Mahomes. Like I said, I know Rice is built different. I know he's a phenomenal prospect, but do I want the rookie receiver with Daniel Jones at quarterback, or do I want the wide receiver one for Patrick Mahomes? Probably want Rice there. Marco says, I have David Montgomery. Who should I trade for? So I think Montgomery is actually set up to have a pretty good week one. So if you wanted to hold on to David Montgomery right now, see what happens week one, and then potentially try to use him and a depth receiver like Christian Kirk to pivot up and see if we can get to James Cook, see if we can get to Joe Mixon, see if we can get to Rachaad White, see if we can get to Kenneth Walker, and see if you can get to one of those running back tiers. I think that would be very interesting. Okay. Fresh Dollar Bill says Rice 5.5 receptions. So looking at the underdog pick'ems, I know I saw a tweet that said that like everybody is going with the hires on these. Like I saw a tweet that was like 96% of people have taken Zay Flowers to have more than 54.5 receiving yards. But if you think the weather is going to be really bad especially at the beginning of the game, I wouldn't fault you at all if you wanted to look for some of the lowers here. And yeah, if you're saying that Rice higher lower 5.5 receptions on Underdog, Rice is higher lower 6 receptions. If you think the weather's horrendous, I don't mind you going with a lower on that. But I do think that this is somebody that you should be looking to play kind of regardless. Okay. Runner says it's the Henry show tonight. I do have Derrick Henry to score a rushing touchdown on Underdog. So I'm hoping we get a decent week for Henry. I'm also not going up against Henry in the Flock League. Instead, I'm going up against McCaffrey. I'm still expecting McCaffrey to do McCaffrey things, but it is nice to know he's a little banged up for me. Brandon says, are we going to go Jerome Ford or Raheem Mostert at the flex? So I think you have a higher market share number for Jerome Ford this week with no Nick Chubb, but Raheem Mostert should just be in a much better offense in a very good matchup. It will just be a higher scoring spot overall for Raheem. So I would prefer Mostert, especially in a half PPR format where we're more so chasing touchdown upside. Welcome to being a member of the flock, Nick. Happy to have you out here. Now, Kong says Rome Odunze or Devin Singletary for the flex. Now, this is a very interesting question, right? Because Rome obviously is the player you want rest of season. I think Rome has a very high ceiling and you should be excited there. But when it comes to what you are going to see with week 1, you have a very safe, projectable amount of touches for Devin Singletary. I don't know, my friend. I think I probably just go ahead and I take Devin Singletary unless you're just chasing upside. If it's a full PPR format and you go, Mason, I'm a massive dog here. I need all the upside in the world. There, I think you're way more likely to end up getting a spike from Rome Odunze than you are from Singletary, where I'd imagine that Singletary, you are going to be a little bit capped there and what you can expect from big plays. Okay. Sorry, the dog is getting me a little off track. Nick says, flex Kyron or Rashee Rice in a full PPR format. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Kyron Williams relatively easily, especially if you're worried about the weather. Like looking at what you have with Kyron Williams, I think it's a very safe projection for him to see at minimum about 70, I don't want to say 70, about 60% of this backfield in Los Angeles. And right now, this does project out to be the highest scoring game of the week. So I do want as many Lions and as many Rams in my starting lineup as I can possibly get. Okay. Now, moving this over. Joey says, should I pick up Jordan Mason and drop either Zeke or Dowdle? Thanks, Mr. Dodd. Much love, my guy. Appreciate you being with us for so damn long now. So I actually got this question right before we went live, and my initial thought on it was, while I would love to pick up Mason, personally, I think you just need to go ahead and more likely than not, I think you need to keep the Dallas guys. Because the thing is, if you are looking at Jordan Mason, there's no way that he becomes viable unless Christian McCaffrey misses time. Whereas if you look at Rico Dowdle, you look at Ezekiel Elliott, there's a chance that either player ends up making a difference here without an injury to the other guy. And then obviously if you get an injury to the other guy, then they become just the full 3-down guy. I mean, 3-down running back in their respective offense. So I would more likely than not look to hold on to the Dallas players. I asked the live chat earlier and they were somewhat in agreement. Okay. Base, welcome to being a member of the flock. Happy to see you here. Happy to see you. See if we can find any more. Cade says, start one, Pickens, Ford, or Javonte Williams. I'm for sure not taking Javonte here. It would either be George Pickens or Jerome Ford. If it is a full PPR format, obviously you get the bonus of the reception volume for Pickens. you get the safety of Jerome Ford. I think Pickens probably has a higher ceiling here. Ford probably has a higher floor. I would monitor the Russell Wilson injury, because if you do find yourself in a spot where Russell Wilson ends up missing this game and you get Justin Fields under center instead, then at that point, I probably would prefer to just go ahead and lock in Jerome Ford. But I think it's close. You can kind of go either way in a full PPR format, that is. But real quick, if you have not done so already, please go down there, hit that like button. We're trying to answer as many free questions as we possibly can. So if you're enjoying this, if you want more of this, I'd definitely go down there and hit that like button. Now, welcome to being a member of the flock, Mark. Really appreciate it. And let's move this down. Lil Mills says, sit one, Amari, Henry, or Jacobs. So obviously you have a great team if these are the guys that you're deciding between. I personally would lock in the running backs with the guaranteed workloads. I think you have to start Josh Jacobs for sure. Between Derrick Henry and Amari Cooper, if it's a full PPR format, you're not going to get the receiving volume for Henry, but he's just so likely to score a touchdown here. So much more likely than what you're going to have with Amari Cooper. Then I'd probably just go ahead and I take Derrick Henry. A Golf for Life, long-time member of the flock. Happy to see you here. Happy to see you. Now, let's see. CDL says, should we trade Higgins and Caleb for Dak Prescott? I would not. I think the difference between Caleb and Dak isn't massive there. I think T. Higgins has the upside to be a low-end wide receiver one if you think that Joe Burrow can be fully healthy this season. So I really would not like that trade. Wet Noodle says, is Zay a bad start tonight due to the weather? I don't think that Zay is a bad start based off the weather reports that we have. If this rain keeps up the way that it is, I mean, it looks like if they have to delay warm-ups, like there's no way that this weather isn't a factor in this game if it carries over into the game itself. So I probably would move Zay Flowers near the bottom of the tier. Like maybe I move him, I'd probably move him behind Tank Dell. I'd maybe move him behind Terry McLaurin. But we'll see. We'll see. Mark says, for the flex in a full PPR format, are we going to go Eckler, Keon, or Brian Thomas Jr.? This is tough. Like Keon, Brian Thomas Jr., I definitely prefer rest of season. I have Austin Eckler right now in the flock league. Actually, Eckler DM'd me on Twitter yesterday, which is pretty cool. Let me see what the projections are for Eckler this week on Underdog. Full BBR league, I think all these guys kind of have a similar amount of receptions, to be honest with you. You currently have Eckler at 7.85 fantasy points, higher, lower. Keon Coleman, you have at 6.65, higher, lower. Like, if you really are excited about Keon this week, I'd maybe take the higher 6.5 points. I don't know if I would start him, though. And then Brian Thomas Jr., you have at about 7.95. So if you were starting a receiver there, it would be Brian Thomas Jr. I think Eckler gives you a higher floor. Thomas gives you a higher ceiling if you think that you have the long receiving touchdown. But of course, if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog, I know I'm being annoying, but there are a ridiculous amount of promos today. I've never seen this many promos on Underdog Fantasy before. I would 100% take advantage of it this week. You have the McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard, exclusive to flock users. You have the site-wide special pick'em, Travis Kelce, more than less than half a total yard for the game tonight. You have the Dak Prescott special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for the game in a couple days. All these are $10 max pick'em entries. So don't think you can just bet the house on them and then get all this guaranteed, but still, $10 over and over again is a great spot. And if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. You will get my 2024 rankings. And with code FLOCK, I will actually get you a free team review on flockfantasy.com. All you have to do is you just have to make sure that you have that account made on Underdog Fantasy September 5th or after. You made a $10 deposit and you have an account made on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. If the email addresses don't match, I won't be able to get you that free team review, but make sure that you set it up with the matching email address. And then I'll be able to credit all those this weekend. But John, welcome to being a member of the flock. Happy to have you, my friend. Happy to have you. Mark coming out with the dono. Appreciate it. Mikey says Xavier Worthy or Chase Brown at the flex. If this weather's bad, I think this actually maybe impacts Worthy more than it does anybody else, because Worthy obviously is the deep threat in this offense. This is a spot that you'd expect that he is commanding target volume 15 yards downfield. If it's windy, if it's rainy, if it's gross, that's not necessarily the best setup. But you have no Hollywood Brown. You have Patrick Mahomes. Chase Brown, we have no idea what the role is going to look like. So I would just go ahead. I would just take Xavier Worthy. If Hollywood is playing, maybe it'd be a little bit different. Now, Matt says Rashee Rice or DJ Moore. So if you look at my rankings currently, I did rank Rashee Rice a few slots ahead of DJ Moore, which I stand by if the weather does clear up. It's going to be something we for sure need to be monitoring. Like I said, they may end up pushing the game because of this. If the weather clears up, I go Rice. If it's gross, I go DJ Moore. Okay. Now, let's move this over. Uncle Fresh is Tucker or the Detroit kicker. Of course, I want to say hook 'em horns. It will be yet again something you have to monitor the weather for. I saw somebody in the chat saying that it looks like it is clearing up just a bit right now in Kansas City. But really, the bad weather is going to be a major factor for the receivers that, yeah, I mean, I just saw a clip from 3 minutes ago and it looks horrendous. Yeah, I don't know if I would. I don't know if I'd be starting a kicker in this game if the weather doesn't clear up a bit. Which some people in the chat say it is. On Twitter, it still looks disgusting here. Okay. Nia, and then also keep in mind, you do have the Lions projecting to score the most points in the league this week, so it's not a horrible spot for them. Neox says, trade Henry and Amari for Bijan and Keon Coleman. Derrick Henry for Bijan Robinson, massive upgrade. Amari for Keon Coleman, downgrade, but it doesn't matter. You get the best player in the deal. Go get Bijan Robinson. That is super, super easy. Okay. Xander says, but it's freaking Justin Tucker. I know, my guy. I mean, of course, hook 'em horns. I want to go all in on our Longhorn, but it is just kind of a tough spot. 714 says Worthy or Keenan in a full PPR format. Honestly, regardless of what the weather looks like, with no Hollywood Brown here, I am just going to go ahead. I am just going to take Xavier Worthy. Daniel says David Montgomery or Terry McLaurin. If it is a full PPR format, I think you can make an argument for McLaurin based off the target volume that he is going to have. I do have these guys ranked back-to-back in our rankings this week. If it's a non-PPR league, though, if it's a half PPR league, I definitely want to be going with David Montgomery there because with how good the matchup is going up against a banked-up Rams defensive line, there I think you do have a ton of touchdown upside for Montgomery. Now, next question coming out from Josh is trade Nico Collins for Zay Flowers in Dynasty. Probably would not look to do that, to be honest. Okay. Sam says, start 2, full PBR, Swift, Javonte, or Jackson Smith and Jigba. Looking at Swift, Javonte, JSN, I'm probably going to go with Swift and Javonte. JSN, somebody that I'm excited for the upside of. And, of course, if you were to get an injury here to Lockett and Lockett actually misses the game, then at that point, I think you could say, okay, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to have a large enough role where he is a very safe play. However, until you have Lockett ruled out, I know we're expecting JSN to be much better this year than he was last, but I think JSN is somebody that I roster for his upside and not necessarily go through and expect that he is going to be a viable play week 1. Like, just to really hammer this in, I mean, if you go ahead and if you pull up what you have with the Underdog Pick'ems at the moment with Jackson Smith and Jigba, I'm assuming that they have one out here even with the... Yeah, they have JSN at 43.5 total yards this week. They have JSN 43.5 total yards. You get a 1.59x multiplier for JSN to score a touchdown. They have a Lockett projection out. They have Lockett at 7.95 points, so about the same. Like, we looked at some other receivers. Like, Shakir has the same yardage mark as JSN. Don't start Jackson Smith and Jigba this week. He has upside, but that is a tough call. Crumblefish, thank you for the dono, my friend. Johnny says, full PPR, start 2 running backs between Kamara, Mixon, Jacobs. I'm going to be going with Jacobs here easily. Obviously, full PPR format there. Kamara definitely looks appealing. I think Mixon's going to be in the much better offense, however. I'm going to go with Mixon in the better offense. And then start one between Rice, Deontay Coleman, or Palmer. The weather does look like it's clearing up, so we probably want to be going with Rashee Rice here. Okay. Masca's JSN projections are always inflated. Yeah, I mean, if you look at JSN last year, if you took the lower on his pick'em, you pretty much printed money if you did that every single week. Now, of course, that's not a guarantee that that's going to be the case this year, but I do think it's a spot that you just don't want to go all in right now. And instead, you roster him on the bench. Maybe he has the upside to really make a difference for you later. Now, let's move this over. Spencer says, do I risk Lamar tonight or Goff against the Rams? So Goff is going to be in a great spot against the Los Angeles Rams. Like we mentioned, it should be the highest scoring game of the week. But at the same time, because Lamar has the rushing upside and Goff doesn't, I would go with Lamar. CD says, JSN was so good in college, I don't know what happened. Yeah, I was all in on JSN as a prospect. I loved JSN as a prospect. I was not smart enough to come out in here and say, oh, y'all are overrating this guy. Trust me, I wish I said that. But I think just because I loved him as a prospect doesn't mean we can ignore what happened last year and just pretend that it's all the offensive coordinator's fault and a change there is going to solve everything. Now, Jason says Anthony Richardson or Jared Goff. I know it's crazy, and I actually thought y'all were going to hate me way more for it. But I ranked Anthony Richardson as the QB3 this week. Should be a super high-scoring game against the Texans. Richardson has all the rushing upside in the world. Like, going through and looking at the pick'ems that you have at the moment, if you look at Anthony Richardson, he's at higher lower 42.5 rushing yards. Higher lower 21.15 points. Whereas if you look at Jared Goff is down at higher lower 18.5 points. Just because rushing matters so much here. I do think that Goff's going to have way more passing yards. I think Goff will have more passing touchdowns. I think he'll be the better quarterback this week from a real life perspective. But Richardson's just going to crush him based off volume. And of course, if you wanted to check out any of these pick'ems on Underdog, like I said, now is by far and away the best time to do it this week. Because if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get that Travis Kelce special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. Code FLOCK will also get you the Christian McCaffrey special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. A Dak Prescott special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. They have a 30% profit boost token. They have vulture protection this week as well. I've never seen them running this many promos. And if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, I will actually go through and break down your team for free on flockfantasy.com. All you have to do is make sure that you made that account on Underdog Fantasy. You made the $10 deposit September 5th or after, and you have an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. So if you don't have an account on flockfantasy.com, just go ahead. After you make the Underdog one and deposit $10, make it on Flock. You don't have to pay anything on Flock. It can be completely free. And this weekend, we will credit you with that free team review. Okay. So moving this over, Hayden says it's going to be an 8:40 kickoff. Okay, so kickoff got pushed 20 minutes. Let's go. Let's go. We can get more time for questions. Amir says, full PPR, Metcalf or Rashee Rain Man Rice? Full PPR format with no Hollywood. I think you are going to go ahead. You are going to take Rice. So it looks like, yeah, everybody's saying that the weather delay happened. Let me pull up the updated broadcast that we have with the weather here just to see exactly how bad it does look. People were saying that it was clearing up in the chat. But, dear God. Okay. Let's look up weather Chiefs. Yeah, as of 12 minutes ago, it looked disgusting. Yeah, if you wanted to go first touchdown being a Derrick Henry rushing touchdown or Pacheco, would not follow you at all for that. Does look like it's maybe a tough spot too. Jay says the weather's fine now. Okay, everybody's saying the weather has cleared up, so maybe Twitter is not the... Okay, it's all clear. So it looks like not having to worry about the weather anymore. All it happened was we pushed it back. But Bahood says we're so back, baby. 20 minutes till kickoff. I'm ready to drop kick something. Well, sadly, it's 40 minutes till kickoff now, my friends. Sadly, we did get it pushed a little bit. Nolan says Henry's touchdown prop has been moving a lot in the last 30 minutes. I actually got really good odds on Derrick Henry to have the rushing touchdown on Underdog earlier today. I think more people are taking it now that they understand that they get vulture protection. So maybe instead of going with the Derrick Henry rushing touchdown, you go with like a Saquon Barkley rushing touchdown to take advantage of the rushing touchdown protection, just because it looks like everybody's in on Henry. Graham says Rice or McLaurin for the flex. I think it's very easily Rashee Rice, but I do want to reiterate, don't play anybody on a Thursday night in your flex spot. Move him to wide receiver 2. Move your wide receiver 2 down to the flex. Charles says there's a rainbow in sunny, letting the field dry. Immaculate. Rainbow and sunny. We're good to go. Thank you for the info. Nick says full PPR Eckler or Curtis Samuel. I'm going to go with Austin Eckler easily here. And obviously you can clip this. You can laugh at me. You can call me an idiot when this doesn't work out. But looking at Samuel coming off a turf toe with an uncertain role here, I think it would be a very difficult spot to just go ahead and take him until you get some kind of clarity of what the target distribution is going to be in Buffalo and get some kind of clarity on how many routes he is running, especially coming off the turf toe. Okay. Let's move this over. Caleb says Xavier Worthy or Deontay Johnson. Xavier Worthy by a mile. I know people hate me for saying this, but can somebody explain to me the Deontay Johnson hype? Realistically, can someone let me know what's going on here? Deontay hasn't been a top 24 wide receiver in years in fantasy football. He gets traded for a day 3 NFL draft pick. He goes to what projects out to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. That offense then takes a wide receiver in round 1 of the NFL draft. I know people are excited about the Carolina Panthers maybe turning a corner, but I don't get why people are so excited about Deontay Johnson. Like, very rarely is betting on a 28-year-old bounce back, multi-year bounce back, a decent bet. Okay. Jerome Ford says, full PPR, are we going to go with Devonta Smith or Rashee Rice? I think both options are phenomenal plays this week. I do have them ranked pretty much 2 to 3 spots within each other. So honestly, I think it is up to you. Can everybody spam the chat? Would you rather play Smith or would you rather play Rice this week? Looking at the Underdog pick'ems, they currently do have Devonta Smith at 11.15 fantasy points, higher, lower, 60.5 receiving yards. If you look at Rashee Rice, they have Rashee Rice at 63.5 receiving yards, higher, lower, 12.5 fantasy points. So yeah, my rankings, I had Rice at 35 in the flex. Smith at 37. So I had Rice over Smith, and it looks like people in the chat are kind of split 50-50 based off what I'm reading here. But the Underdog pick'ems are higher on Rice than they are with Smith, if that helps. Okay. Now, Derek, I'm very sorry. I'm not doing any roster reviews through just messages right now. We're doing that all through flockfantasy.com, which, like I said, if you can just deposit $10 on Underdog, if you haven't made an account, then you can get that free on flockfantasy.com. Okay. Now let's move this over. Charlie says Zamir White or Jalen Warren. So I think both running backs are going to be in very bad offenses this week. In the case of Zamir White, you don't have to compete with Najee Harris, however. So I think you can just go ahead. I think you can take Zamir White over Jalen Warren. But it does sound like Jalen Warren is good to go this week. Okay. Now let's move this over. Harrison says Blake Corum or James Conner. This is James Conner by a mile, my friend. I don't know if you're saying like rest of season here, but obviously week 1, the expectation is Kyron Williams is good to go. James Conner completely crushes. I'm not really expecting us to see a large workload for Trey Benson immediately. So I think it does make a lot of sense to just go through, jam in James Conner. He's my running back 1 in the Flock League this week. I think it's a really easy spot. And she's saying 70% of the people in the live chat have hit that like button. Thank you so much for everybody going through and dropping a like on the stream. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, super excited to get this going. And if you like us answering these questions for free on the live stream, just go down there and hit that like button. Gabe says, how do I get the team review after using code FLOCK on Underdog? So here's what happens. Underdog, the following day, every single morning, sends me a list in a CSV format of every single email address that signed up to Underdog Fantasy and made a $10 deposit and used code FLOCK on Underdog. What I'm going to do, and what the developers of Flock Fantasy are working on right now, is I'm going to take those emails, I'm going to plug them into flockfantasy.com, and anybody with an account on the site will get that free voucher for a team review. So it's not going to be an immediate thing, my friend. You have to wait for Underdog to get me that email address. Then I'm going to go ahead. Then I'm going to upload it on flockfantasy.com. Then you'll have the free review voucher where you can submit your team to get reviewed by me. And yeah, like I said, what I'm going to do, it sounds like the developer said that is going to be built out for either tomorrow or the next day. But at least at the very latest by this weekend, I'm going to take all the email addresses that signed up to Underdog Fantasy on September 5th, which is today, September 6th, and September 7th. I'm going to upload them all on the site. And as long as you used code FLOCK when you made that $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy, and you signed up with that account on September 5th, 6th, or 7th, you should be accredited as long as your email address is the same email address that you have on flockfantasy.com, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's move over. Joel says, what happened with CMC just joined? So the CMC just popped up on the injury report with the calf strain and the Achilles. This is the injury that was bothering him previously. He is limited. I'm still expecting that McCaffrey is going to be playing. I do think that you need to roster Jordan Mason in every single matchup, though. Son of a gun called me Shara. It's like Shay or Shay. Come on, you were studying me, doc. I misread it, my friend. I'm sorry. We're going through reading 1,000 names. I know that name's pronounced Shay. For whatever reason, I thought there was an R in it. E-Man says, Evans, White, London, Rice. We need a wide receiver 2 and a flex. So I think my flex here, my wide receiver 2 is going to be Drake London. I know that Kyle Pitts is good to go, but still, I think that London is set up in a really nice spot this week. And then for my flex, I am going to go with Rashad White. White's just a very easy play where you do have the guaranteed volume there. Okay. Edgar says DK Metcalf or Malik Neighbors. I think you can go back and forth on who you would prefer rest of season. But specifically for week 1, I think with a banged up Tyler Lockett, I'm going to go ahead and I will put in DK Metcalf instead of Malik Neighbors. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for you to just see, I don't know, what happens with Neighbors here. Now, Cole says, I convinced my sister to do Derrick Henry and Keon Coleman for Xavier Worthy and Jahmyr Gibbs. Did I win? I got the latter. Gibbs and Xavier Worthy are a lot better than Derrick Henry and Keon Coleman. Gibbs over Henry by a mile. Xavier Worthy over Keon Coleman very easily. E. Morales says, what if you signed up for Underdog last year with a code? I'm very sorry. So it's just different time periods. We're doing different Underdog offers. So it's not like if you signed up to Underdog in 2022, then every single year you get the draft guide. Every single year you get a roster review for the end of time. So if you signed up last year with the offer, I'm sure that you got whatever the promo was then. And this is just the new promo. So this is why anybody who signed up, say this offseason, they got the 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. The draft guide doesn't really matter at this point anymore. So that's why if somebody signs up to Underdog during the year this year, they are getting a roster review from me through flockfantasy.com with that account. Okay. So let's move this over. Stan says, I have Brees, Gibbs, Montgomery, Ayuk, Waddle, McLaurin. Who should I flex? So obviously you're starting Hall, Gibbs. You're starting Ayuk, Waddle. The flex comes down to Montgomery, Terry McLaurin, who if you check out my rankings, I do have these guys ranked back-to-back in a full PPR formats. I think Montgomery is in a phenomenal matchup going up against the Detroit Lions. Terry McLaurin should have every single targets. I have them ranked back-to-back. If it's a full PPR, I'd probably go with the receiver. Non-PPR, I'd probably go with Montgomery, as I think he has more rushing upside. We can check what Underdog has here for their pick'ems. Underdog has Terry McLaurin at higher, lower 8 targets, higher, lower 60.5 receiving yards, a 1.15x multiplier to score a touchdown. Whereas you look at David Montgomery, Montgomery actually has a higher yardage mark. He has even odds to score a touchdown. But obviously, the reception mark is going to be much lower with Montgomery. So I think if you're playing in a full PPR format, you probably want McLaurin. In a non-PPR league, or maybe even a half PPR format, you want Montgomery. But of course, if you wanted to check out any of these pick'ems on Underdog, or you wanted that promo where we were talking about getting your roster reviewed from yours truly, you can find all of that over on Underdog Fantasy. Now is by far and away the best time to get on Underdog because I've never seen them offering this many promos. You get the 30% profit boost token. You get the Vulture running back protection. You get a free Christian McCaffrey special pick'em more than less than half a total yard, only with code FLOCK. For tonight's game, you get a Travis Kelce special pick'em more than less than half a total yard as well. This week, you're going to get an additional Dak Prescott special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. And if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And I will review your team for you through flockfantasy.com as well. All you have to do is make sure that you have an account set up on flockfantasy.com. It can be a free account that has the same email address that you signed up to Underdog Fantasy with an account starting on September 5th. And you made at least a $10 deposit as well. But I've been literally putting out pick'em slips every single day this week just because the Underdog promos have gone freaking wild for opening weekends. I've never seen them like this. I highly recommend you hopping on now. Justin says, should we start Tucker in the rain? So from what I'm hearing in the live chat right now, it looks like the weather has cleared up. Obviously, the rain was very bad to get this game delayed, but still, I mean, it looks like Justin Tucker is somebody that you should be able to go through and play. Double R says, I have James Conner, Calvin Ridley, McBride, and Swift. I need 2 in the flex. Andrews is already at tight end. To be honest with you, I would prefer McBride over Andrews specifically for this week. I think that the Arizona Cardinals and Baltimore Ravens will be a highest scoring game. Between James Conner, Calvin Ridley, Mark Andrews, and DeAndre Swift for the 2 flex spots, I think James Conner with a small Trey Benson role at the beginning of the season is definitely somebody that you need to play. And then the other call between the elite tight end, Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Swift, if it's a full PPR format, I think you can go with the elite tight ends, but I would highly recommend trading one of those tight ends because if you have McBride, Andrews, you don't really want to be flexing them. I mean, an elite tight end is going to give you similar to like a wide receiver 3 production. Okay. Now let's move this over. C. Harrell's coming out with a hilarious comment. So it's the first time I've been put in timeout since I was 5. Brutal, my friend. I'm sorry. Jeff says, are we going to go with Michael Pittman or Rashee Rice? I think Michael Pittman's actually in a very good spot this week in what should be a higher scoring game going up against the Houston Texans. But with Rashee Rice, when you have no Hollywood Brown, I think it's a very easy spot to just go ahead and lock in Rice here. Adrian says Malik Neighbors or Zach Moss in a half PPR format. So I'm always hesitant to go out there and put in that rookie wide receiver into our lineup. Now, with that being said, of course, this is one of the very rare instances where Malik Neighbors is just a bona fide alpha stud prospect. I think you can go ahead. You can just play Malik Neighbors. Now, Jonathan says Stephon Diggs, Zay Flowers, or Rashee Rice in a full PPR format. I would definitely go with Diggs or Rice here. I'm not going to be considering Zay Flowers in this range. Now, if you had Hollywood Brown playing, I think I'd probably go ahead and go in the direction of Stephon Diggs. But with no Hollywood Brown, you do have just such a good spot with Rashee Rice. Just make sure you don't put him in the flex spot. Instead, put him at wide receiver 2 since it's a Thursday night game. Now, I got you, says, Yo Mason, I got Saquon and Ayuk for Javonte and Amon-Ra St. Brown in a 10-team full PPR format. What are you thinking? I think going from St. Brown to Barkley is a downgrade. I think going from Javonte to Ayuk is an upgrade. So I think it's probably a fair deal. I'd be very interested to hear what everybody in the live chat has to say about this. Can you please spam the chats? And let me know, would you rather have Saquon Barkley and Brandon Ayuk? Or would you rather have Javonte Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown? Just say St. Brown or Barkley. St. Brown or Barkley, what side do you want here? Okay, we got 1 vote for the Saquon side. 1 vote for the St. Brown. 2 votes for Saquon. Then Saquon, St. Brown, Saquon, St. Brown. St. Brown, St. Brown, St. Brown, Saquon, St. Brown, St. Brown. St. Brown, St. Brown, St. Brown, St. Brown, St. Brown, St. Brown, St. Brown. So it does look like most people would rather have Amon-Ra. I would say Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably the best player in the deal. I don't think it's a horrible trade by any means, though, my friend. Okay. Now, Dylan says, I have Gibbs, JT, Debo, Neighbors. Do I need a better receiver? I'm sorry, my friend. We're only doing roster reviews through flockfantasy.com. It is so much like literally this is how the window's going to look when we do all the roster reviews on the live stream through the site this year. I'm going to be able to go through. I'm going to be able to literally just see your entire team, everything listed out. I'm going to be able to see your league settings as well, just the whole 9 yards. So it's so much better than you just trying to say like, hey, Mason, here are my 2 receivers. Here are my 2 running backs. Do I need better wide receivers? I don't have nearly enough context to really answer that question for you. So all roster reviews that we're going to do this year will be through the site. Okay. Now, Jerksy says, Drake London for Marvin Harrison Jr. I have Harrison and London ranked inside the same tier. I think it really does come down to your personal preference and what you're expecting. I think most people would probably prefer to go with Harrison, and I most likely agree with that. Now, moving over, our next question from Raphael says, is Lamb going to play? I'm expecting CeeDee Lamb to play. I haven't heard anything otherwise. If you look at his underdog pick'em right now, I mean, they have CeeDee Lamb at a mark where it's higher, lower, 79.5 receiving yards. You actually get a 1.19x multiplier for him to score a touchdown. So I know these seem really low, but a big reason for it is it's just a horrible matchup against Cleveland. So Lamb will be good to go. For sure, start CeeDee Lamb. Just maybe lower your expectations a little bit compared to what they should usually be. Okay. Now, let's move this over. Luke says, should I start Lockett or Judy if Addison's out? 1, I'm expecting Addison plays. And 2, between Lockett and Judy, it's a very difficult spot because Lockett's dealing with his own injuries. Lockett has been banged up for pretty much the past month. Sounds like that's nothing. I mean, nothing there really has changed. So I more likely than not would go ahead and I would probably take Judy. It's just such a tough, I mean, if Addison's out, but I'm expecting Addison to play. I think you play Addison. Just such a tough spot with the Lockett injury because I don't know what to expect. Now, Ash Material says, hey, Mason, are we going to start Christian Watson or Curtis Samuel in the flex? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start Christian Watson relatively easily. I think Christian Watson has a really good matchup. I think it's a really high-scoring game. And Curtis Samuel's coming off a turf toe. I have no idea what the target distribution is going to be like in Buffalo. I think Christian Watson's the better receiver as well. CRL says, did John show up to the meetup? Yes, John was there. He was there for about 3 minutes exactly on the dot. He arrived late. I was thinking that he didn't show up. I mean, he had to drive down from Oklahoma where he lives. So it took him a little bit of time, but he eventually made it. Okay. Now let's move this. Raheel says, what's good, Mason? What do you think about Deontay for my second flex? If it's a multi-flex league where we're not as concerned about the upside and more so just concerned about the floor that we have with these guys, I think that we are in a decent spot. Now, my issue with Deontay Johnson is if you're like in a 2 wide receiver single flex format, there I don't know if you have the upside of Deontay Johnson really making any difference at all. Now, Thomas says, hey, Mason, Jalen Wright or Tyler Algier for my bench. I would actually probably rather go with Tyler Algier because if I'm looking at Algier, there's a clear path for him to be a must-start running back in week 2. Where if you were to get an injury to Bijan Robinson, all of a sudden Tyler Algier just comes out and absolutely crushes. However, if you get an injury to Achane, if you get an injury to Mostert, then at that point, Jalen Wright is still kind of splitting the backfield. We've seen the upside from Algier before, so I probably just want to be going in that direction. Okay. Now, Dave says Flowers or Tank Dell with the weather. So it sounds like the weather isn't really going to be an issue at this point. If you look at my rankings, I do have Dell and Flowers ranked back to back. If you look at the underdog pick'ems that you have right now for these guys, you have Tank Dell, higher, lower, 55.5 receiving yards, higher, lower, 9.15 fantasy points, where you have Zay Flowers, higher, lower, 10.75 fantasy points. So Underdog does have Flowers higher. I have Flowers 1 spot higher myself. So I think you can go in that direction. But I know I'm being annoying. I get it. Like I said, this literally never happens. You need to take advantage. Underdog has a ridiculous amount of promos going at the moment. You have the Christian McCaffrey special pick'em that's exclusive to Flock users, higher, lower, half a total yard. The Travis Kelce special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for tonight's game. The Dak Prescott special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for the Cowboys game. You actually have Volter protection if you take a running back to score a touchdown. You have a 30% profit boost with a pick'em as well. And like I said, if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And if you make a $10 deposit on an Underdog account that was made on September 5th or after, and you have the same email address on that account as you do on flockfantasy.com, yours truly will go through and break down your fantasy football team for you. You'll get a free roster review through flockfantasy.com. You just have to make sure that that Underdog account that you have has the same email address as the account on flockfantasy.com. Okay. Now let's move this over. Azu says the starts a tool on flockfantasy.com is busted. Are we going to go Neighbors or Flowers? Yeah, I'm very sorry right now. The developers are literally working as we speak. We're switching over the site where if you pull up the site, you're looking at the old version. And obviously we've been showing off the new version here. So we're having a massive transition tonight that I could not be more excited about, but you should definitely expect some bugs relatively soon if it's not already happening. But anyway, between Neighbors and Flowers, I mean, I think these are two guys that I also have back-to-back in my rankings this week. I have Neighbors ranked 1 slot ahead of Zay Flowers. I wouldn't fault you whatsoever for going through and putting Flowers over, though. Now, No Name says Devonta Smith or Zay Flowers. Here, I think it's a very clear case where I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to take Smith. I think it's a higher scoring offense this week. I think Smith is a better receiver than Zay Flowers as well. Now, The Loop coming out with a donation. Thank you, my friends. And Defo says, what's up, man? Should we start Rice or T. Higgins in a 10-team full PPR format? So we did get news officially today that it sounds like you have Jamar Chase playing this week. So now that we got that official news, I will be updating my rankings to have Rice ahead of T. Higgins, especially if the weather looks like it's completely cleared up in Kansas City. Okay. Now, let's move this over. Matthew says Jalen Wright's a monster. I don't disagree whatsoever that Jalen Wright is a very good running back. But to go through and look at the ceiling that we've seen from Tyler Algier in the past, I mean, Tyler Algier is also a great running back. Obviously, he's the RB2 on his depth chart. I mean, in the case of Jalen Wright, he's the RB3. But you go back to the end of Tyler Allgeier's rookie season in 2022, and you saw Tyler Allgeier have 135 rushing yards against the Bucs. You saw Tyler Allgeier have 139 rushing yards against the Saints. You saw Allgeier, I mean, the last month of the season, Tyler Allgeier was averaging over 110 total yards. Now, of course, that's never going to happen with the healthy Bijan Robinson, but you're not starting him unless Bijan goes down. And at the same time, I mean, if you're looking at what you have with Jalen Wright, he's the RB3. You're not starting him in games where both Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert are healthy either. So both guys are kind of in a similar bucket. Okay. So let's move this over. Runner says Chase is most likely playing. The report that I read from Ian Rappaport says that Jamar Chase is for sure playing. I'll go ahead and pull this up just to make sure that I am not mistaken here. But Rappaport says Jamar Chase expected to play week 1. Yeah, so I'm making the assumption Jamar Chase will be playing. He will be in my starting lineup. I wonder if Underdog's confident enough to put out a pick'em for him. And yeah, even Underdog has a pick'em for Jamar Chase right now. Definitely a lot lower than what you naturally expect to be there at 66.5 receiving yards. Higher, lower, 10.5 targets. Now, this is crazy. To have someone's projection at 10.5 targets, but only 66.5 receiving yards. That seems like that should not be the case. But let's move this back over to some more questions. Virtues says Rashee Rice or Raheem Mostert. Go ahead, play Rashee Rice. Just to let you know right now, if your question is, should I play Raheem Rice or player X? More likely than not, the answer to that question is Rashee Rice. I do want to reiterate, do not play any player tonight in your flex spot, as you are more so wanting to go ahead and put them at wide receiver 2, just in case anything happens through the lineup before the Sunday games. You have the flexibility. You have that flex spot open. Okay. Thomas says, is Brian Robinson worth a bench spot? So this is why I'm very excited to move everything over to flockfantasy.com, right? Because questions like this, I want to say 100% Brian Robinson's worth a bench spot. But at the same time, if you're asking this question, this could be a 6-team league. This could be an 8-team league. Where if that's the case, I don't know. I need to see what's on the waiver wire. But in a regular fantasy football league, 100%. Now, Dade says, hey, Mason, sit one between Adams, Waddle, or London. I think if you look at how poorly the Raiders offense projects, plus Bowers is dealing with the injury as well, I think we're going to go ahead. We are going to be taking Waddle and London and benching Adams. And we can kind of look at the projections here. I'd imagine that they're going to back me up on this. Currently on Underdog, you have Devontae Adams higher, lower, 72.5 receiving yards, 12.85 fantasy points. Actually, they have Waddle lower. They have Waddle only at 60.5 receiving yards, 11.95 fantasy points. They have London. They have Adams highest on this list. Can y'all please spam the chat? Who would you bench here? Because maybe I'm way wrong. I'm actually somewhat interested in the lower than 72.5 receiving yards on Adams this week. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a pick'em slip real quick. We're going to take the Kyren Williams rushing touchdown because we have the vulture protection. And I'm going to go lower than 221.5 passing yards for Minshew, lower than 72.5 for Adams. I'm going to use my 30% profit boost on this as well. So since we're using the 30% profit boost, we only can do a $10 pick'em at the very most. But that is $10 to win about 60. And if Kyren Williams gets vultured to the goal line from Blake Corum, we still win anyway because we have the vulture protection on these. So let's go ahead and let's lock that in. And yeah, I actually really like that pick'em slip this week. Obviously, it's not a 50-50 chance of hitting, but it's $10 to 60. So if we're getting about 6-1 odds on that, I really like it. But of course, if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog, make sure you're doing so right now. Make sure you take advantage of that profit boost. Make sure you take advantage of the vulture protection. Underdog's also running out the Travis Kelce special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for the game tonight. They're also running out the Christian McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for Monday, and the Dak Prescott special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for the Cowboys game. I've never seen Underdog have anything close to this many pick'ems. And if you use code FLOCK, you're also going to get the 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And you will get a free team review from yours truly on flockfantasy.com. All you need to make sure that you do is go and set up your account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address that your new Underdog account is made of. So let me reiterate. If you're new to Underdog on September 5th or after you made that account, you made a $10 deposit, make sure you set up that account on flockfantasy.com, which can be a free account, with the same email address. That way I can hook you up with that free team review. Because if it's not the same email address, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have a way to find it. I'm not going to have a way to get you that set up. Okay. Now let's move this back over. My mouse just died out on me. What is happening here? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we may not have control of this any longer, but anyway, let's go through and let's answer some more questions. Jack says Jerome Ford or DeAndre Swift. I think this week in particular, I'm probably going to go ahead. I'm going to take Jerome Ford with no Nick Chubb. I think you have guaranteed volume. I am starting DeAndre Swift in the Flock League. I really hope that DeAndre Swift has a decent game. My issue with Swift is it's going to be very difficult to project out what you have when it comes to the Khalil Herbert and when it comes to the Roschon Johnson workloads. I want to see what the split is in that backfield, where we know with Ford, he's pretty much going to get everything. Now, Joe says Ridley or Reed in a full PPR format. I think I'm going to go ahead and take Calvin Ridley over Jaden Reed this week. I don't know if that's how I had in my rankings, but honestly, if it's not, I probably need to make that adjustment. Joe says we're going to go Waddle or Pacheco in the flex. Start Isaiah Pacheco, but you need to be moving Pacheco to running back 2, moving your running back 2 down to the flex since Pacheco plays on Thursday night. You want to have the flex spot open just in case anything happens. Now, Jeremy says Kenneth Walker or Malik Neighbors for the flex spot in a full PPR format. I'm going to go with the running back with the guaranteed workload. Very good matchup as well going up against the Denver Broncos. Make sure you go with Kenneth Walker. Amir says Rice or DK Metcalf. Go ahead and take Rashee Rice with no Hollywood Brown. Judah says James Cook or Kenneth Walker. Now, this is a very tough question. Your lineup must be stacked if this is what you're having to deal with. I would go ahead and take James Cook, though, because I think you have significantly more points scored in Buffalo than Seattle this week. Now, Katon says, hey, Mason, should we flex Montgomery or James Conner? I think Montgomery's in a really good spot given the matchup against the Rams. It should be the highest scoring offense in the league. But I would go ahead and I would take James Conner with a limited Trey Benson early in the season. Michael says, hey, are you going to go with J.K. Dobbins or Jalen Warren in a full PPR format? Don't get cute with it. Don't start J.K. Dobbins. Wait, see what the role looks like week 1, and you can consider J.K. Dobbins in week 2 if you like it. Alex says, do you think it's viable to start Mostert and Achane this week against Jacksonville? 100%. I mean, right now you actually have the Miami Dolphins projecting out to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the league, so I 100% think that you can do that. Okay. Now, let's move this over. Rudy says Diggs, McLaurin, Amari, or Ford at the flex. This is a standard league. I think we're going to go ahead, and if it's a non-PPR format, you can make an argument that Jerome Ford has slightly more touchdown upside than these other guys. Obviously, non-PPR league, really the only thing we're focusing on is touchdowns, touchdowns, touchdowns. Looking at the TD odds that you have right now, you have Stephon Diggs with a 1.37x multiplier to score. You have Jerome Ford with the 1.2x. You have Jerome Ford higher, lower, 70.5 total yards. You have Stephon Diggs higher, lower, 60.5 total yards. So if it is a non-PPR format, non-PPR leagues, just typically running backs are going to be better plays in the flex. Okay. Now, Corny says, should we trade Ayuk for Devon Achane? If it's a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, where wide receiver depth doesn't matter too much, and you need a running back, I think I would. Okay, De Niro says Eckler or Chris Godwin. I definitely would go ahead and I would take Chris Godwin this week. Hopefully, we are going to get some more usage from Godwin out of the flex, out of the slot, which should be really exciting. Tyrone says, let's go. I have Mahomes and Andrews tonight, praying for a high-scoring game. Good luck, my friend. Good luck. Now, let's go. A-Rod says, Tresner is a certified hater. Don't pay him no mind. Tresner is pretty much a professional hater. He gets paid for a living. But Joel says, Rice about to prove the world wrong. It does seem like most people are in on Rashee Rice, my friend, so I don't know if you are saying that Rice is going to be disappointing. Carter says, start 3 of these 4. DK, Waddle, Chase, and Rice. I'm going to go Chase. Sounds like he is playing. I'm going to go Waddle and Rice. I'm going to bench DK Metcalf. I think DK's in the worst offense out of that group. Louis says Wicks, Leggett, or Jaleel McLaughlin in a full PPR format. I'm probably going to go Wicks if you need someone to start this week. I'd probably go Leggett if you're looking for upside rest of season. Cabron says over-under Kelsey for 61.5 receiving yards. I probably go fewer 61.5 receiving yards for Kelsey. John Bowe says, how good is Blake Corum? Pretty good running back. I mean, I don't think he has... I think based off what we saw with Kyron Williams last year, I think Kyron definitely has a higher floor ceiling combo, but you are in a fine spot. Okay. Let me move this around. Sorry. Pulling up the Ravens broadcast for me real quick. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's not going to show me as I'm streaming. Maybe if I move it to the other monitor. Sadly, no. Okay. But anyway, let's see. Costa says Malik Neighbors or Xavier Worthy. A very interesting question because obviously you have no Hollywood Brown, but I think you can take Neighbors still. I probably go with Malik Neighbors. The target share is just going to be crazy. Okay. Wayne says Jordan Love or Anthony Richardson this week. I'm extremely high on Anthony Richardson. I'm embarrassingly high on A-Rich. Like if you look at the underdog pick'em right now on Anthony Richardson, you actually have Richardson with one of the highest marks with this fantasy points higher lower at 21.5. 21.5 for A-Rich. But I do want to remind y'all, this is the last chance to take advantage specifically of the Travis Kelce special pick 'em on Underdog, less than half a total yard. You also get the Dak Prescott, more than less than half a total yard. You also get the Christian McCaffrey, more than less than half a total yard, plus the 30% profit boost, plus the vulture protection. And if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get the 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And you will get a free roster review on flockfantasy.com from yours truly as well. If you use code FLOCK on Underdog. So make sure you take advantage of that. I've never seen them do this many promos. But thank you again. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And I'm shutting down this live stream because I want to pull up this broadcast. And sadly, my computer's not letting me do it with OBS. I will be live after the game tonight, of course, to talk about everything that happens. But the much love, really do appreciate you. And I know I'm being annoying, but for the love of God, take advantage of those Underdog promos this weekend because I've never seen anything like it.